Hello friends, I am your host Mr. Gaurav. Welcome to my channel Vedic Astrology Guru. On this channel, I will be telling you about Indian Vedic astrology, its deepest secrets and a lot of advanced techniques. So to keep yourself updated with the latest content, kindly subscribe to my channel. And if you have any queries, any doubts, you can always mail me at vedicastrologyguru7@gmail.com. And yes, your special comments are always welcome. Kindly leave one of those down below in the comment section. So let's start to do some interesting videos about Vedic astrology. Hello friends, welcome to the first wave of insights. Now insights are basically interesting astrological waves. Well, in insights, we would be discussing about the holistic approach to Vedic astrology. How are the houses built? What are the significations and why are those significations of the houses? And the planetary relationships, the characteristics of the planets. We will be discussing a lot of stuff, intricate stuff for the holistic learning of this Vedic astrology concept. So in this first wave, I would be discussing the story of 12 houses of the horoscope. Now the 12 houses story is not a story of the astrology. It is everybody's story. It is the story of my life. It is the story of your life. So it is the story of every one human on this planet. So what is this story basically? Well, as you can see, in Vedic astrology, the diamond style chart, the houses move anti-clockwise, in an anti-clockwise manner. The characteristics of the houses or your analysis will always be in an anti-clockwise manner, starting from the first house, the ascendant. So what is the story behind all this? What do these 12 houses actually signify? What is the story of every single house in a horoscope? Why are they linked? How are they linked? I would be telling you about all this in a short while. Now I have discussed the characteristics of the 12 houses in one of my previous videos present in Crash Course of Vedic Astrology. So these are the characteristics of the 12 houses, but if we look carefully at these 12 houses, the characteristics of these houses, then we will understand that there is an entire life, there is an entire happening here. Each and every instance in a very synchronized and orderly way is hooked up with each other. So as we know, the first house is the ascendant. So I'll zoom it for a bit. Now we all know this first house is the ascendant. Now this represents the body, the head, the complexion, temperament, nature, strength, health, and the east direction. So this represents the native himself when he is born. Now this is basically the ascendant is the zodiac sign rising in the east direction at the time of birth of the native. On the eastern horizon, the rising zodiac is considered the ascendant, the first house of a horoscope in Vedic Indian astrology. So this represents the birth of a child. Now the child is born. Now we start looking at how healthy the child is or how weak the child is, what is the complexion of the child, how beautiful his eyes are, how does he look, and then eventually how does he grows up. So when the child is born, as you can see, when the child is born, so the first house gets activated. Now what happens? Is as the child grows, as the child takes birth, after his first house, the second house prevails. So instantly after birth, he needs nourishment, he needs food, he needs mother's milk. So comes the food, and so comes the speech. So when the native is born, when the child is born, and his life transcends, so he instantly needs food, he instantly needs nourishment. As he here this house also signifies your right eye, your vision. So instantly his vision starts. Every person, when a new child is born, tries to reciprocate with the eyes. So here comes the activation of the eyes. So this house also represents your family. So immediately after the child is born, he's being told about the mother, the father, the grandparents, and the people around in the house. So this shows immediate family. Now as the child starts growing, a couple of months old, he starts recognizing the family. As you have seen, a newborn, if anybody else if a non-member of the family takes a newborn into the hands, then the baby starts crying. Why? Because he recognizes the family by their scent. But as the child grows up, as he steps up to his adolescence, the third house comes into the picture. Now this house represents your courage. This house represents your hands. Now the adolescent, the infant, or the age between the adolescent and infant and towards growing up. Now this child starts using his hands. He starts showing courage. He starts moving over his own feet gradually. So the life moves from the first house with the birth, the second house with the food and speech, to the third house. He starts using his own body. He starts showing that I don't want to do this, or I want to do this. So that is when the courage comes in. So as the child grows further, then the fourth house comes into the picture. Now the fourth house, this story starts from the ascendant, then goes, the child is born, then he needs nourishment, so does the food and speech come in the picture, and eventually he grows older and starts taking his own decisions, starts showing that yes, I can do things. An infant turns into an adolescent, and adolescent turns into a child. Now this is the child growing further. Now when he grows further, now this is the fourth house, which represents his mother, his house, his land, his vehicles, luxuries, his mind. Now the mind, his mind. So this is when the native understands these things, these assets are mine. This house belongs to me. These toys, all the stuff that is being provided by the family, this belongs to me. So that is when he has a feeling of, he gets a feeling of the belongingness, that yes, these things are mine. So now his mind starts to work. He realizes his environment. He realizes the mother. Why the mother and the mind and the home? Because this is his immediate interpersonal environment. So now he starts working towards what I have in life and what I don't. Then the story moves further. Now this story is the story of every human in his life. Now our sages were very wise to embed these characteristics in this North Indian diamond style chart. That is why I praise the North Indian diamond style chart very much. Now the life moves from the fourth house to the fifth house. Now in the fifth house, now he's almost in his teens. He is now in a teenage. He is now a teenage, and then comes the part of intelligence, then comes the part of higher education, then comes the part of love affairs, future plans. So now this child has turned into a person. Now he wishes to go for higher education, and now this is the time when one gets attracted towards opposite sex. So this is the time for the love affairs to happen. This is the time when crushes for youngsters happen in life. So intelligence becomes a very important part, because this is when a native judges his intelligence, that what will I choose, whether I would be going to an economic sector, whether I would be going to a medical sector, whether I will become a lawyer. He starts making future plans for himself. So he has to pursue the higher education eventually. So all these characteristics are embedded in the 5th house. Now when he gains the intelligence, when he gains his higher education, then his life has to move on into the further realms of life. Now what are those realms? Now comes the life to the 6th house. Now what is your 6th house? Now 6th house after the 5th house represents debts, diseases, enemies, litigations, loss, competitions, injuries. So once the native has surpassed the 5th house, his life goes to the 6th house. He has gained the knowledge, he has achieved his degrees, diplomas, education. Now he goes into the realm of the job, the profession, and that's when he sees a lot of competition in life. That is when he sees a lot of enemies confronting him. Now people who are your competitors, they are almost like your enemies. So you have to overcome all this, the health. Now being a healthy child and growing up into a healthy teen really doesn't matter. But once you start going out into other circle, you start working, your life takes a toll, the eating habits change. That's when the diseases starts to pour in. How come debts? Well, sometimes people don't have enough money to pursue higher education, so they have to take debts and they move further in their life. So what happens when one faces these competitions and overcomes these competitions? Once this is achieved, the native feels that his life is settled. Now he has a settled job, he is settled in his own profession or business. So then comes the 7th house in the picture. So the story has been moving further and further. Once the native has established his job, he has established his profession, he has gained the higher education, and he is settled, then he plans, then the story goes to the 7th house. Now your 7th house, as we can see, represents your marriage. Then is the time when native feels an urge to get settled down. This also shows your business partner. So when the native has jumped into his job, into his profession, now this is the time when he starts doing good initially, and he also thinks about, can I do a business? That is when he thinks about a business partner. What if? Now this question arises in everybody's life at one point of time. What if? Can I do? Can I rise further? Maybe with a collaboration, maybe with somebody, can I rise further? So that is when the business partner comes in. That is when the marriage comes in. So the life story reaches here at one of the most interpersonal relationship in one's life, the marriage. So this is the story which starts from the ascendant and goes up from the adolescent to the growing up child and the teens, and then the profession, and then the younger age where a person gets married. Now what happens beyond the marriage? What happens when one has achieved, one has already gained a position for himself in the society? What happens when he has got his most interpersonal relationship, the marriage in his life, a wife or a husband in his life. What happens beyond that? So as the journey of the native starts from the ascendant and his initial requirement of nourishment and starts with the courage, moves on to his own assets, his own belongings, and then to higher education, to higher intellectual, to being a higher intellectual and to have knowledge, to be more intelligent, and then further face the competitions and overcome those competitions from the 6th house and get settled in his profession, get settled in his job or business, and then eventually moving on to having his most interpersonal relationship in his life, getting into a marriage. What happens beyond this? Then is the part when the 8th house in life starts. So what does 8th house signify? So 8th house represents the longevity. 8th house represents age. It represents lottery, hidden treasures, occult sciences, ancestral property, troubles, sudden losses and gains. So my friends, once the marriage has been done, there can be sudden gains or sudden losses in life. Not because of the marriage, I am joking, but because a lot of chapters have been opened in the life. Now there is a lot of scope for a person to have dents. It could be in his interpersonal relationships, it could be in his career, it could be in regards to his own health. That is when the life starts pounding on a person. So then is the time. Now this longevity is of the native himself, and this also house represents the longevity of the friendships we have, the relationships we have. So this also shows the longevity of the recent interpersonal relationships. This shows that if there is a possibility of getting hidden treasures, sudden benefits in life, a lot of people have seen that just after 1 or 2 years of marriage, they have sudden boost in their professional life or sudden loss. They have to face sudden financial losses, and at times the life starts getting better. That is when this house of secrecy, this is the 8th house, the natural Scorpio sign, the house of being secret. Now that is when the secret problems in life starts to pour in the life. But what happens beyond? One starts facing troubles in life, then what does that lead to? So that leads to the most important trine, the 9th house. Then is the time when a native tries to get all the answers he is not able to get, with all his intelligence, with all his caliber, with all his performance, all his power, all his resources. He is not able to get those answers. Why am I failing, or why am I getting these troubles? That is when the 9th house starts. That is when a native tries to approach his religion. That is when he tries to look answers into his own religion and culture. That is when he tries to find a guru. That is when he tries to find a preceptor. Now this preceptor is not necessarily a yogi. He has to be somebody with the knowledge. The knowledge in if the person is having trouble in his job, in his profession, then the preceptor is the person who gets him out of that trouble. So this is the preceptor. That is when the native thinks about other things in life, those things which are not visible. So once he has gone through all the troubles of the 8th house in life, once he has already gone through the interpersonal relationship, then troubles, and then definitely upliftment from the 9th house, that is when the life moves on to the 10th house. And yes, I'll come back to the 9th house once again. So this is not just the preceptor or the guru. The recent, your 7th house. The 7th house is the house of marriage. After having a long marriage, a husband and wife they become more of a friends to each other. When they grow old in that relationship, 20 years down the line, 30 years down the line, they become more than friends to each other. They become a perceptor to each other. They help each other in troubles, in lean periods of life. A husband helps his wife, a wife helps his husband. They both become part hand in hand with each other to support through the lean periods of life, through difficult periods of life. So if the person is not having a guru like a yogi or something, then the husband and the wife, they become perceptor to each other. So that is when the life moves. This is how the picture of life, the story of the 12 houses, the story of every human life moves ahead. So once they have passed through the stage of 9th house, that is when the life moves on to the 10th house. Now a 10th house shows our karma. That is when the person has gained higher knowledge beyond his own college, the degrees we have gained. Now that knowledge is something which tells us how to be successful in the profession, but the knowledge about how to be successful in life is gained through the 9th house. After this is the time when the native thinks about his karma. This is the time when the native starts to think about his karmic balance, what he has done in the past, how he should do in the future. This is when he starts to think of his status in society. Now this is the period when the native has grown into a middle age. Now this is the time he thinks about his status. He thinks about establishing himself in the society. He tries to achieve social goals to uplift his image in the society. So this is the house of the 10th house, which shows the karma, the status in society. So once this has started up in a native's life, the karmic pattern, when the native has started of thinking that whatever he has got in life, now he should move on by improving himself. He should work over the things for others as well. So this is when the 10th house comes in the picture, and this is when the native moves on to the 11th house of the horoscope. Now what does 11th house show? Now 11th house tells us about income, it tells us about elder co-bonds, it also tells us about friends and the most important, hidden desires. So after trying to work hard to improve his karma, this is the time when native either starts to accomplish his hidden desires, or he entirely sees it as a failure. If the house is weak, if there is affliction, then there will be no fulfillment of the hidden desires. But if he is really following his karma, if he is trying to get rid of the karma balance, then he would be fulfilling his hidden desires. And now the income is like the retirement, what he really has in his hand. Everybody wants to have something saved for the end of their days, for the lean periods in life at a later age. Everybody wants. So this is when the basic income comes into the picture. And when one has income, one has gone through the karmic balance, one has gone through the karmic balance of the hidden desires, then is the last house of the horoscope that comes into picture is the 12th house. Now what does the 12th house tells us? Now the 12th house tells us about expenditures. Now this is almost the time when we grow old. This is the time we have to face hospitalization. This is the time when we face utter expenditures. Now this is the time when we grow. I have seen a lot of couples, when they grow old, they plan a lot of foreign travels. So this is the later age. Now it really depends on what you really want to do, what you really have made out of yourself. What is your karma balance? So this is the story So expenditures, hospitalizations, or if you have really worked hard over the karmic pattern of your life, that is when the moksha, the liberation comes in. So this is the story of life, or this is the story of the 12 houses of a horoscope. It is something for you to decide.